Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to another Optimum Derby Live. My name is Martin Crowson. I'm joined today by Tom Heeley, MD of Optimum Derby, as always. Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon. How are you?
All right, thank you. You?
Yeah, good. No, good. Good couple of days with the skiers, doing some testing in Manchester. So,
Nice.
yeah, a bit of a different sort of couple of days. Yeah, preparing for the season to come and making some last-minute changes to their strength programs, really leading into the winter. So, no, good. All
Yeah.
good.
When you start thinking about the heating needs to come on, Tom needs to up his workload with the skiers.
Yes, that's exactly it. I tend to buy some heated shorts and socks and pants.
Anyway, you join us today for the fourth of our series of four football injuries related subjects, and today we're talking not about a specific injury, but about when you are injured, what can you actually do to stay fit, and how much of a head start can that give you to get back on the training field and eventually on the pitch. So Tom, let's start. I mean, it's fairly obvious. Whatever part of an injury your body's got, CV can help you, heart and everything else keep ticking over. So how important is that?
Yeah, no, massively important. I think obviously from a physical point of view, the benefits are there. So I think from a cardiovascular point of view, it's quite obvious that keeping those things going, if you've got a sport that is either heavily cardiovascular based or very limited cardiovascular based, like the skiers that we were just talking about, then their races are 25-ish seconds long max. Right. So it's not heavy cardiovascular, but they need to keep up some base and some sort of level. Whereas obviously footballs and rugby and some of your team sports obviously a lot longer. So yeah, if you can just keep over, even if you can't like fatigue yourself massively because you've got a scar and you can't sweat too much and get that dirty, or you haven't got the flexibility, or you haven't got the strength really to push it hard, even if you just do low, slow, steady stuff is great. And then obviously things like the mental approach to that as well. There's a sense that I can actually do something. I can actually keep fit. I can actually keep doing some stuff rather than doing absolutely nothing and just waiting for the day when everything's perfect and you can carry on.
I can definitely understand that as a mental approach as well, because you're already got your focus on the end goal, haven't you? Instead of just sitting around doing nothing, thinking this is really frustrating. You're actually up and doing something.
Yeah, and even you don't realize, especially like if a knee injury or like a lower body injury, knee, hip, or ankle, sort of some real simple stuff like swimming and cycling are great for that, because you've got very little load, very little stress going through the joint, but actually you can start to regain some of the range of movement as well. So yeah, really useful.
Yeah, and it may not be a new thing, but I've heard a lot recently about when you're injured. The old adage was to rest it. Now there's a bit more of a focus on trying to do something to get blood flowing through the area. Tell us a little bit more about that and how important that may be.
Yeah, there's a few different sort of like acronyms that people are using. So the traditional old one was RICE, so rest, ice, compress, and elevate would be your traditional sort of four. But then it's kind of moved away a little bit from that to like things like police or price. So protect. So first of all, protect the area if needed, and then optimal loading. So that's some sort of loading that's specific to the injury and the problem that you've got that keeps things continuing to work. And then ice and compress and elevate again, still at the end of that. And price is very similar. So price is protect, and I think it's rehabilitate or words to that effect in that R section. But certainly down to some sort of loading and some sort of work rather than doing zilch.
Yeah, and on more specific focused injuries, would it be a case of trying to get the range of movement to increase whilst you can't do everything, but you can do some things?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think if you think about somebody who's maybe broken their leg and got a cast on, and they may not have had surgery, but they still need to wait for that bone to heal and knit together. Yeah, you've got your cast on, but can you still keep doing things with your knee? Can you still keep doing things with your hip? And can you still keep moving your foot as much as allowed and as much as comfortable and isn't going to stress the bone within the cast? Can you still keep that movement up? Because even just keeping that is a massive benefit for when you get out the cast and either go into a walking boot or a pair of crutches and start to walk. So whatever you can do in that stage where you feel like you can't do anything almost is still really useful to do.
Can you understand people's fear in that situation, Tom, in that people don't dare do anything because they don't want to make anything worse? And how would you, as a sports therapist, talk them around those sort of fears?
Yeah, certainly. No, it makes complete sense. I think sort of the initial stage is obviously about protecting. So we need to protect that area and we need to be careful about what we're doing. But there's a second element to that of, let's say you have broken your lower leg, so somewhere between your knee and your ankle.
Yeah.
why can't we continue to work your hip in some sort of pattern or some sort of way? It might not be with your foot on the floor. You might just have your leg in the air, or you might be doing it on a machine, or you might be doing it with a band or something different where you're not even stood up. So you haven't got to worry about putting weight through the joint or putting weight through the bone itself, but actually those hips and those muscles around your hip are vitally important for when you get out the cast and start walking again. So rather than trying to build your hip and your ankle at the same time, let's keep your hip as high as we can, and then when the ankle's allowed to, we can just build that up rather than having to try and build both together, which obviously slows the process down.
Sure. I mean, I guess we're only going to be talking, generics here, but how much of a head start can some form of work give you in terms of pick a certain injury out of thin air and just talk about what that person could do and how further down the line that could make you, ahead of schedule, let's say, in terms of getting back to playing? Yeah,
absolutely. I think if you were to imagine something like let's say a knee, a meniscus injury within a knee, so a surgical meniscus repair, typically you're not allowed to load maybe 8 to 12 weeks, depending on quite where that is. So that's loading beyond 90 degrees is often what's discussed. So no significant loading beyond 90. So that's a normal squat position, or if you sat at a chair, that's roughly 90 degrees. And so therefore you're not allowed to go much beyond that, but with significant load. So leading up to that, you can do a lot of work within those upper ranges. So from sitting on the chair to the top and standing up properly. And you can also do a lot of work on the bike to try and regain that range of movement. So that could be simply just sitting on the bike with a very low resistance and just spinning and just about touching over.
Okay.
And that's really useful as well, just to kind of help with blood flow. So it encourages new blood to the area. It flushes out a lot of the old sort of swelling that might have been there from the surgery. And again, if you imagine you've kind of got this hinging joint that's doing this, the more you continue to do that with very little stress, whatever's left as residue and swelling with inside that joint will be pushed out and spread around. So from that point of view as well, it's really useful to try and move the fluid and move the swelling around in that area and encourage new blood flow to the area.
Yeah, okay, I get that. Yeah, and what about just pick another injury for us, Tom, and talk about the processes that you can go through, how to build things up, intervals, etc., etc.
Yeah, certainly. I would start with a seriously low level base. So a bit like we've just talked about there, that sort of meniscus problem or even sort of ankle fracture. You're not going to be able to stand up on a bike and put some significant effort through, because you're not going to have that strength to do that, and it's probably going to be uncomfortable. If you're struggling to stand up and walk around with an ankle fracture, you're probably going to struggle to stand on the pedals and put some significant work into the pedals. So in terms of putting an interval in, that's probably one of the last things we do. The first bits will be working in sort of like zone 2 heart rate, and keeping that heart rate fairly consistent throughout, and just maintaining a good level of speed and good level of control, and a consistent base through there. And then it can be increased that to level 3 or zone 3, and then you start adding a few more intervals, and that'll come with the work that you're doing in the gym, is obviously what you're doing on the bike as well.
Yeah, okay. And there's various other things that you could do, again, I guess, dependent on injury, with bikes, rowing, boxing, swimming. And we spoke about this earlier, a ski erg. Tell us a little bit about those sort of things and which occasions they could be useful in.
Yeah, so, I mean, we've kind of focused a lot of this on football injuries. So predominantly most football injuries are lower body, so sort of hips and down, and it might be groin and knees and ankles. So predominantly we're looking at sort of lower body injuries. So things like a rowing machine, a ski erg is great, even an assault bike where you just move the arms. So those pieces of boxing, we do a lot of seated boxing. So maybe sat down on a boxing, on a box or on a chair, and then do some seated boxing from there to keep some cardiovascular work going, which can be interval based, similar to what the sports demands are, but you've got no load or stress going through the lower body.
I think if I was ever to get into boxing, that sounds like my sort of boxing, actually.
Honestly, it's the tiring thing in the world. I've done several sessions before where there's been maybe 4 or 5 players who are all in this same sort of level of can't do anything stood up or too much stood up, so we're sat down, and we might have a little circuit going, and it might be battle ropes, it might be ski erg, it might be press ups, and it might be boxing. And I'm stood with the pads. My arms are sore, and I'm not even hitting anything, and my arms are sore. So these boys are whacking it some, and it's good fun.
So disappointingly, it's not just 2 blokes sat next to each other smacking some goals out of each other.
Could you imagine? Leaning forward.
That would be great to watch. Let's start that as a new sport.
Yeah, maybe that's next week's podcast.
And just tell everyone what a ski erg is, Tom, if they don't know what a ski erg is.
A ski erg is very similar to almost, I suppose you could call it like a stood-up rowing machine. Okay. So it's got the same sort of fan and the same sort of belt inside a rowing machine. It's got the same sort of resistance settings on it from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10. And then it's got two handles that are up high, and you pull those handles through. So we do that seated, so on a box or a chair, if you can't stand, or if you can't work on something like a bike or something like a rowing machine where you actually have to push in and out with your feet, then we often just do that stood up, because it's just as good for that, and it's good for trying to get some mechanics back of hinging through the hips as well.
Okay. And presumably, certainly for that ski erg and also the seated boxing and stuff like that, your heart rate's really going, and that's got to be good for you.
Yeah, 100%. Especially for some, especially for your team sports where it's very interval based. There's very, very few times you're going to be constantly moving or constantly running. The most of it is going to be a short sprint here and then a short sprint back, or short sprint somewhere else. So those intervals are really, really useful, even if it's not in a sport-specific setting, but to get your heart and the rest of your body used to those interval-type sessions.
Yeah, okay. And if people are, thinking of, they've just picked up an injury and they do want to try a few of these things out, Tom, just give you a shout and get in contact, because presumably, certainly for me, I would be the one that's scared to push it too far, but presumably with a therapist like yourself or any one of the team at Optimum behind you, you'd be guiding people every step of the way to get them ahead of their intended comeback time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that. Yeah, so it's just about working sensibly, and we'll listen to the body and listen to what the injury is, and also listen to maybe what the surgeon and the specialist have got to say about what we can and can't do. And obviously they're the do nots, but there's a lot of do's that you can do around that as well to make things easier long term, and certainly improve or make things quicker and try and reduce the risk of other injuries further down the line. So obviously we've got to be sensible and careful, but there's a lot of things we can continue to work on.
Yeah. Just let everyone know that you're not just someone that sits there telling everyone else what to do. You do actually do something.
I do. I try to.
Where's this?
So this was at this is on my cycle ride this summer from coast to coast. This was what's it called? I've forgotten the name of it. Not Rhino's Pass, Hard Knot Pass, in the Lake District. So this was about 2.5K. It was brutal. That was the hardest bit of the event. This is somewhere local. This is in Derbyshire. This isn't too far from home. Right. I would have done it as part of a training ride.
And then this one looks horrific.
Yeah, this was my triathlon last summer. And yeah, just I enjoy doing these things. Partly for a challenge, just kind of setting a challenge somewhere in the mark or somewhere in the year ahead, and just kind of trying to mark. But also to try different sports out, and just to kind of get a feel for people who are coming into the clinic. What do they experience? Sure. What does their training actually look like, and how does that feel for those guys? So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of a challenge for me, and to get a bit of an understanding for clients and stuff.
We'll get Tom out of lycra off the screen ASAP.
Yeah, that needs to go quickly. Yeah.
We'll just remind everyone watching that this is the fourth in a series of 4 football-related injury lives we've done over the last few weeks. The first one was about an ankle injury, how you recover from ankle injuries. These are all on our YouTube channel. There's also Why Does My Groin Hurt? So check that one out. And last week we did the rehabbing a hamstring. So if you get 5 minutes and you'd like to look at some more common football injuries, please visit the YouTube channel, where there's loads more information and videos as well. We did one there about torn Achilles, if you've ever suffered from that. It's really serious injuries there, about patellar or hamstring grafts for ACL issues. And just a more general one about whether you're ready to play again, whatever injury you've got, to get back on the football pitch. Tom, thanks a lot for your time today. Much appreciated as ever.
No problems. It was good. Enjoyed it. It was good. Good chat.
Yeah. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. You can check out the Optimum Derby website to find out a lot more about what Tom and his team do. And if you want to contact Tom directly about anything we've spoken about in today's show, please contact him via the email address at the end of the screen now. That is me, Martin Crowson. Say thanks a lot for joining us today and at any stage over the last 3 weeks as well. We'll be back soon here on Optimum Derby with some more information to help you out. Thanks a lot for joining us. All the best, and bye-bye.